in our little town so serene, where the grass is green and air so clean. We gather round the table every night, joyful days, oh, was I yet, with values passed, with generations past, living life with love that surely lasts. As the city lights look bright, we hold to our roots tight, in our hearts the same old fires, guided by the good old days. Sharing moments with friends always divine, working hard for what we seek, respecting each word we speak, holding dear to our family ties underneath these nostalgic skies. As the city lights so bright, got too tight, with our hearts the same old fire. Oh, we sway with every change of time, but in our hearts, old love and soul, that baby in our heart, in like a golden heart, in this fast-paced world we can fight. Traditions keep our hearts going wild. What do we find in our heart's simple ways? We got it by the good old
days. We stand firm in our belief. Hold tight. Through the times clearer we can see, crazy world spinning round. Stay grounded. In our hearts simple truths agree. Whisper of freedom and liberty rings true. Our foundation strong and deep. Holding on to what we know, while the rest of the world lets go. Steady path we choose to follow, while winds of change blow. In the story we built for trust and never doubt, time flies but we won't bend. Communists talk loud and fast, stay silent. Our quiet strength is our reply. So salute to change, but pause. Reflect in unity, our dearest friend. Holding on to what we know, while the rest of the world lets go. Steady path we choose to follow, while the winds of change blow. In shadows we find our light, through chaos we stay upright. Steady. With courage, faith on our side, forever standing firm, our guide. Holding on to what we know, while the rest of the world lets go. Steady path we choose to follow, while the winds of change blow.
I thought the world would turn slower, not as fast as it does. Conservative hearts were steady, sure, and just because. A simpler time of values, when right was what it was. It seems like those days vanished with just a fleeting pause.
Right-wing dreams of yesterday, steady in the fray, keeping timeless traditions, leading all the way.
Times are changing, feel the buzzing, staying true and they're fussing. Keep the flag a-flying through stormy nights. With the star-spangled banner, I stand tall with manners. Cross my heart with hope in sight. Here comes freedom in the land of hope and free, with liberty. Stick to values in the trends. Families gather, let's defend. Hold the line, keep the bond alive. Truth in our vision, in God we make decisions. For our dream, through thrive and strive. Here comes freedom in the land of hope and prairie, with liberty. We'll keep fighting for what's right, standing strong in the night. Here comes freedom in the land of hope and bravery, with liberty.
In the diner, sipping soda pop, jukebox tunes that never stop. I see faces from different scenes, lost in cultures on a different dream. We walk down the same old street, but our stories never meet. Different worlds side by side in this twisting 50s ride.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Culturama, where on this show, what we are trying to reclaim the traditional spirit of Americana back into the United States, the one that we have lost so long ago with the induction of postmodernism, critical theory, gender and race theory, as well as the induction of rather questionable cultures. So thank you so much for joining my show tonight. It's going to be a really big show tonight. We have big stories to talk about. We have a big interview coming up. And, you know, with all technical issues out of the way, hopefully we can proceed forth and have a really good show today. So I hope you guys are doing well. I already see that the chat is hot and popping with my usuals, and hopefully we'll get some more new people in the chat as well. So thank you so much for those that have joined already so early in the stream. Thank you so much. And yes, I already seen people mention in the chat that we'll be talking about Daniel Penny. This is true. We are going to be mentioning the Daniel Penny case. Of course, we're going to be talking about the United Health Insurance CEO assassination, because that's what it was. They keep calling it a targeted attack for some reason. It seems to be an assassination and entirely planned. So we're going to be discussing that as well. And also later on the stream, we have special guest Monsieur Z. For those that don't know who he is a pretty well-known YouTuber. He has a few 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and he talks about politics and history. And I'm going to love to bring him on the show today so we can have a discussion about Americanism and American identity, nationalism, and a host of other things. I also want to ask his opinion on the future of American politics, because I have a few theories of my own, and I think you guys are going to appreciate that. But before I proceed forward, what do you guys think about the headband here? So these are Christmas lights, you know, obviously a Christmas light headband. It's December, it's Christmas season. Finally, I have broken out the Christmas decorations. I'm a big believer that you hold off the Christmas decorations until after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is over. So what do you guys think of my setup here? Obviously, I have Santa Claus, I have some tinsel and some ornaments. I wanted to ask you guys' opinion on what do you think I should put up next up there. Obviously, I got my moon to work finally, the highlighted moon. Obviously, Christmas lights is another option I could put back. I already have multiple light sources here, though, and I don't want to inundate my studio here with too much light, but I think for just this month alone, I can hopefully maybe plug in a couple of Christmas lights. But if you guys have any additional suggestions about what I should put in the background, that would be very interesting, and I'd love to hear your opinion on that. But on the topic of the headband, let's see. Oh, hold on a second. So I wore this last stream on Tuesday. I think people enjoyed it. And I said that, you know, I'm going to be picking between two headbands for the Christmas season. And so I could wear it for the rest of the month until Christmas, maybe even past Christmas till New Year. And I wore this one last time, red antlers here, and I'm wearing this one today. And I was going to do a poll on Twitter about what you guys think I should wear, whether for the rest of the holiday season I'm going to be wearing this headband, the Christmas tree lights, okay, or if I should wear this headband. Okay, so I'm going to ask the chat first. You guys feel free to write whenever you can what you prefer more. Do you prefer, let me do a side by side actually. Hold on a second. Let me do a side-by-side here. So this is how it looked like with the antlers, all right? I wore this last stream with the red turtleneck. So this is what it looked like with the antlers. I think these are very cute. Personally, I'm more partial to the antlers, but I think this one's also really cool. Hold on. I also think this one's pretty cool as well. And before you make your decision, the selling point is also this headband has 4 settings technically. There's an off setting, but you also have, hold on a second. Huh? Isn't that cool? I have a delay in my stream. That's why my reaction was delayed. Okay, so you have the seizure effect right here. And then you have a moderate seizure effect. and then you just have solid glow. So I'm going to be having the solid glow on for those of us that do struggle with blinking lights. But I do like the Christmas lights. But like I said, I am more partial to the antlers, so I want to hear what the audience thinks about that as we move forward. People seem to be more interested in the Daniel Penny trial in the comments, so yeah, I'll be talking about that as well. But also, I will be doing a poll on Twitter, so if you guys do follow me on Twitter, feel free to vote there. And if you don't follow me on Twitter, what are you doing? Follow me at Pensac Daniela. I will be pulling that up later today on the stream, so you can find my Twitter. It's just at my last name, my first name, at Pensac Daniela. There you will find a lot of updates of the show, what's coming up, future updates and future episodes. And you could also comment or DM me if you have any suggestions on who I should interview or what topics I should cover, because, you know, I try my best to cover as many topics that I find pertinent and interesting to the conservative and right-wing movement in the United States, as far as it relates to politics, obviously, as well as culture, hence the title of this stream, Culturama. However, I also love to hear multiple suggestions from my audience, so please feel free to DM me there. And if you don't follow me already, also follow me and the For Liberty Network on Locals as well. Okay, you could find us at the just For Liberty Network at Locals, and there you could find personal updates of Culturama and what's going to be happening. And also, if you add some money to the tip jar, you will see exclusive content as well that relates to the show and what I'm doing in growing the show, so that would be very much appreciated. And also, lastly, if you haven't already, please like the stream, share the stream. That would be very much appreciated. And if you're watching on X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it, feel free to like and share the stream. If you don't want to send a Rumble rant or donate anything to the show, that's fine. You know, I completely understand. It is a holiday season. I know some people want to save up their money and spend the least amount of money to buy gifts for their friends and family. But I do encourage you to at least share the stream, because that goes a long way in helping the growth of this show, and I want to grow this show as much as I can. So, okay, we have a couple people. Okay, we have Barney Styles saying he's Team Antlers. Cool. AP for Liberty said, I think he said he liked the lights. Understandable. Steffi for Liberty, the lights one looks way less comfy. The antlers look comfy. The antlers are comfy. They're also pretty soft in touch. You know, a little cheap material, but, you know, it is more comfortable, and I think it's more cute. But okay, Barney, so far we have 2 for 1. We have 2 for the lights. Oh, I'm sorry, 1 for the lights, 2 for the antlers. Team Lights Nelson. Okay, it's equal now, 2 for 2. Well, we're just gonna have to proceed, wait and see, and I'll be doing that poll on Twitter, so you guys can vote for that. Okay, so like I mentioned, we have a lot of stuff coming up. We have a lot of stories coming up. Obviously, I want to talk about the assassination attempt. I want to talk about Daniel Penny. I'm going to be talking about the Tennessee gender-affirming care ban as well, and the Biden administration saying that it is violating the 14th Amendment. I'm going to be talking about that because I think that's very important, and I haven't seen a lot of people talk about that on Twitter yet or on the news as much. But I'll be talking about that, and also, if you stick around at my time, 6 p.m., halfway through the show, that will be, I believe, 8 p.m. Central. We have a special guest, Monsieur Z. He is a big-time YouTuber. He talks about history and politics on his YouTube channel under the same name. And I will be asking him a little bit about what Americanism means and a little bit about national identity. So that would be very interesting. I think you guys will enjoy that. Okay. Before I proceed with the next stories, I do have a few things I want to pull up for you. So I have this silly video concerning President, not for long, Joe Biden. And what is President Joe Biden known for? I'm just going to ask the chat. I think we all know that he's known for being a little sleepy, right? We have a video of him falling asleep, and I was going to play this clip and just, you know, go on a commercial break, but I also found another clip about David Hogg just come out that he wants to run for a chair position at the DNC. So we're going to be watching 2 videos before we proceed with the next few stories. Give me a second here so I can bring that up for you guys. Okay, so as you can see, the screen behind me. This is President Joe Biden falling asleep during a deep sleep during his trip to Africa. Let's take a listen. Well, there's not much to listen to, but let's take a watch.
and services, but will also promote
He's deep in thought, he's contemplating what's being said, or is he? He's actually falling asleep.
Aiming at aligning this project with national priorities and other bilateral and regional commitments.
What a great representation of the country. Obviously, there's not much happening in this video. He's just sleeping. But, you know, people have always talked about, at least those on the left, always talking about how Trump is a terrible representation of the United States. He's an embarrassment. He has temper. He has no filter. Fine. You know, I don't believe those things. Clearly, President Trump has a keen ability in maintaining positive negotiations with key national leaders. But at least he doesn't fall asleep live, right? And at least he doesn't fall asleep on camera. What a guy, President Joe Biden. Yet even more evidence that he probably shouldn't be in office anymore. Also, I want to play this clip, and I just found out about this. I know it was earlier today. I didn't get to Twitter until just now, later in the evening. But President, oh my God, I hope not. David Hogg says that he's considering running for DNC chair. Wouldn't that be a nightmare? And, you know, I have mixed feelings about David Hogg. Initially, I thought he was just a guy with a good heart, a guy with a good heart who was clearly impacted by a school shooting situation. And, you know, he just wanted to go forth and try to make positive change politically or socially. And that's what I initially thought way back when this first happened. But obviously, as the past few years have shown, that's not the case, and he's actually quite extremely annoying. I personally find him annoying. Maybe that's just my bad attitude and my cynicism, but I think a lot of people watching this would agree. And so for him considering running for DNC chair is, well, everyone in the DNC, I think, to one degree or another, is rather annoying. So perhaps this is a good fit for him. But I think this is posing a bigger picture and a bigger question about what the Democrat Party will look like in the next few years, because, you know, following their failure in the last presidential election, I think the Democratic Party is having like a coming to Jesus moment, and they're really questioning what they're going to do to proceed forward in the next 4 to 8 years. And I think that's leaving a lot of Democrats scared, especially and more specifically the establishmentarian types or the neoliberal types, you know, because the Democrat Party is contingent, obviously, on a mobilized subset of people that typically venture in a more populist ideological center, right? And those people, and people that represent that pretty well, I think, are people like Cenk Uygur, the leader of the Young Turks, for instance. He talks quite a bit about the importance of populism in the mobilization of the Democrat Party. And I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself here because I know you guys just want to listen to the clip. I just want to mention this, and I want to ask this in our interview later today, but the Democrat Party, I think, is going to see a major split following this election that they just lost. And they're going to really have to contend with the fact that they have to start speaking to their lesser base, or the more mobilized and effective base of populists. Because as we proceed forward within the next 4 to 8 to 10 plus years, populism is going to be, I would say, the more popular strain, pun not intended, the more popular strain of politicking that we haven't seen previously, at least not in the last couple or so generations. And we have seen that happen within the Republican Party big time with the MAGA movement, so much so that I think the Republican Party as a whole is changing to be more MAGA-like and more populist, for better or for worse, whatever your opinion on that is. The Democrats haven't done that yet, and the Democrats are maintaining a very old model of how they mobilize each other and how they participate in politics. And so I find it interesting that someone like David Hogg, someone very young, very fresh, obviously extremely annoying, but still I think pretty tapped in, he wants to run for DNC chair, and it'll be interesting that if he does have that position, how would he change the course of the Democratic Party? Let's take a listen.
Ever. David, good morning. I'm so grateful to have you.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about this. Are you thinking about running for this leadership post, and why?
Well, honestly, I'm considering it because I think that
it's a little quiet,
obviously,
but
I think we need a new generation in the DNC. If this election has taught us nothing else, I think we need an intergenerational coalition as a party but I've spent the past 2 years or so traveling around the country, working to elect young people and talking to everyday people, knocking on doors in every swing state that you can imagine, and some very red states as well, from starting out in Alabama to places like Texas and Virginia and everywhere in between. And the thing that I've realized more than anything is that we have a number of problems in the party, but I think the main one overall is that we would rather live in a comfortable delusion than an uncomfortable reality. And I think what the party needs to do is open its eyes and take its fingers out of its ears, basically.
What is, when you say delusion, what is the delusion?
I think it's that we can just surround ourselves with people that agree with us a lot of the time in terms of the party leadership and also within the party itself, and think that's just who we need to be talking to constantly instead of listening to people who don't agree with us. Not that we inherently agree with them, but I think so much the issue that we have as a party right now is a kind of condescending tone that we have in a number of ways, where we're seen increasingly as elitist, as
elitist. That's kind of what I was trying to get at as well.
And I think there are real conversations that we need to have, and we also need to help more, not just young people, but people from normal backgrounds.
The elitism comes with the establishmentarianism and the strain of establishmentarianism found within the Democratic Party. I think that's also what he's getting at, because, I mean, let's face it, Biden, clearly almost dead, non-functioning, cerebrally not present, and Kamala Harris was the walking skin suit, and they couldn't find anyone better. No one really stepped up to the plate. I suppose the choice of Kamala Harris was natural, considering that she was already part of the Biden administration. But still, like, they really couldn't find anyone better. That's because they have a very gatekeepy approach to, I think, how they. Well, even so, I mean, even Gavin Newsom. I mean, they could have gotten someone more effective than Kamala Harris. Actually, now that I think of it, I don't think it's just gatekeeping. I think the Democratic Party is just. It's just a shell of what it once was, and it looks like David Hogg, a representative of the youth involved within the DNC or in the Democratic Party, seems to be somewhat aware of that. So
run for office. I think Tim Walz is actually a great example of this, of running as a teacher and gaining all the experience that he had to massively outperform even in a Trump-held district, right? We need everyday people, from teachers to doctors to everybody in between, to start running for office and help changing the future of this party. Anyway,
I'm not going to listen to the rest of this. I think that you guys get the picture here. David Hogg is someone to pay attention to as the years proceed, and within the next 4 years, you never know what could happen, right? Okay, let me double check the chat here. Okay, we have a good viewership on Rumble today. Thank you, everyone that has joined us tonight. It's going to be a really great show. We do have a lot of topics to cover, though, so I want to pull up the next few stories that I have for you, and I think you're going to like it. And once in the next 30 to 40 minutes, we have a special guest interview with Monsieur Z, a big-time YouTuber. He makes videos about history and politics, and I think you guys are going to enjoy that. And also, I also want to say that please, please, please consider sending a Rumble rant if you want me to read your comment. There have been no Rumble rants sent yet, so I highly encourage everyone, or not everyone, I'm going to be realistic here, but I highly encourage viewers to donate a Rumble rant. It goes a long way in supporting the show, and also it kind of forces me to engage with your comment and read it out loud. And if you have any question for me, I will answer it as well. And so, because I don't have a chance to read all the comments all the time live, I have like multiple screens I have to pull up. I can't get to it. But also, if you want a better chance to get a hold of me as well, you can text the show to a line, special line provided. The number is 573-416-0635. Again, 573-416-0635, and that number that you can text once again is 573-416-0635. If you text that number, I will have a greater chance at reading your comment, but especially when we have a larger viewership on Rumble like we do today, I don't have a chance to get to all of your messages. Okay, I'm going to be pulling up the next few stories here. So I want you guys to hang in tight. I'm going to play your favorite commercial. And I will be right back.
Well, happy Comes down together like Marilyn with a twist. She's got a master's degree and a style you can't resist. On Culturama, baby, we're shaking up the scene. So hit that like, make it click, you know what we mean. Like and subscribe, come on, don't delay. With Daniela at the helm, we're leading the way. It's Culturama, taking back tomorrow today.
You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock, we are forcing behaviors.
Mao ordered his citizens to throw off the four olds. Old thinking, old culture, old customs, and old habits. So, your whole life went in the garbage overnight, no biggie. And those who resisted were attacked by an army of purifiers called the Red Guard, who went around the country putting dunce caps on people. Yeah, who didn't take to being a new kind of mortal being.
If you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted.
Well, things haven't been so sweet for Ben & Jerry's after the company posted an anti-American tweet, a few of them, on the 4th of July. The ice cream makers declared the United States was founded on stolen indigenous land.
Well, someone should tell Target that, because they're now selling swimsuits with tuckums in the women's section of the store. And they even have a line just for kids.
Yeah, we're going to reach out to Ben & Jerry's and ask them how they can live with themselves as they operate a multi-billion-dollar company on stolen land while declaring other people give up their so-called stolen land.
This is the child section. This is literally the kids section. I'm next to a literal onesie that says whatever the hell that means. We have glad you came out, and I'm so happy that you're queer. In the kids section. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry, but pride and toddler don't belong in the same sentence.
Good news! Starbucks will offer its workers reimbursement of travel expenses related to accessing abortion and gender-affirming procedures.
Kyle Rittenhouse was seen wearing a Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt, and they wanted to distance themselves from that individual. The employees at the company also were donating to Democrats. Hafer doubled down on throwing many in his base under the bus, describing them as racist and a repugnant group of people.
Hey, Liberty lovers, stop scrolling.
Counting numbers driving me mad. Statistics piling, it's all a fad. Everywhere I look, numbers inside. Adding this up, keeping me up at night. Oh, those figures dance and whirl in this cluttered number world.
Okay, welcome to my favorite segment of the show, and that is offensive statistics, where I talk about statistics that are, believe it or not, offensive. And on this one, we're going to be talking about transgenderism. Yes, everyone's favorite topic when it comes to statistics. But the reason why I'm bringing this story up is because we have a major case that's coming up regarding a state measure passed in Tennessee that is going to prevent or place a ban on what they call gender-affirming care. But really, it's just facilitating surgeries for minors 13 to 17 years old when they're simply not ready to have those surgeries. Also, Tennessee is placing a ban on the prescription of certain hormone therapies and other puberty blockers that a child would seek if they want to seek for a gender-affirming care. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this, and let me pull up the news stories that I have here for you, is really because of the lawyer that caught my attention. So this is a transgender lawyer from ACLU who will be arguing before the Supreme Court that underage children should be allowed to undergo life-altering surgeries, including castration, the placement of chest binders, and puberty blockers and hormone therapy. Now, for those that don't know, what's going on is that last year Tennessee had passed a state measure that would place a ban on these surgeries and these therapies, life-altering therapies, for better or for worse, more for the worse. And the Biden administration had said that this was actually violating the 14th Amendment. And so what this lawyer is going to do, and this attorney is going to do, is going to argue that before the Supreme Court, because it has went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and now it's a Supreme Court issue. And I just want to watch this video, and I want us to really imbibe the essence that this prosecutor, or I'm sorry, this attorney and this lawyer is putting out there in this interview with Jake Tapper. So let's take a listen. Again, this isn't a transgender individual, for those that may not be aware or be able to tell. Initially, I was pretty shocked because that looks like a man to me on the screen there, but wait until you hear their voice. I think their name is Chase Strangio. So let's take a listen to what he
I want to bring in the lawyer
has
who's
to
going to
say.
argue this high-profile case before the U.S. Supreme Court, Chase Strangio. Chase, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. So the case comes at a time when 26 states have passed laws restricting healthcare treatments for transgender youth, according to a CNN analysis of data from the nonprofit think tank Movement Advancement Project. So how do you plan to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court in a case that could have wide-ranging implications beyond the state of Tennessee?
Well, thank you for having me, Jake. And obviously, this is a critical inflection.
In case you didn't know, this individual is transgender. If you can't tell by the voice, but I want you guys to be aware of that. Okay, let's proceed forward.
Point for transgender people across the country. We're coming off of an election season where transgender people played an outside role in people's consciousness in terms of the way in which we were situated as a threat to others. And when we look at the map of states that ban this type of evidence-based healthcare, we went from 0 states that had these bans in 2020 to now more than half the country. So before the court tomorrow.
And that's absolutely true. It's actually the popular opinion that this measure should be used throughout all states. Almost half, over 20, think that there should be a ban placed on these gender-affirming care therapies. And as we will see later on, up to my statistics portion of this segment, I do want to look at a few states that have already passed this and are going to pass it, because it is actually a popular stance that most people don't want this to be pushed on their kids by medical professionals, or at least suggested. And I do say push because I don't know if you guys are aware, it's already known, this is known to be a known phenomenon, that medical professionals will outright tell the parents the well-known phrase, would you rather have a transgender child or a dead child? And I don't think this is an old wives' tale. I have heard multiple transgender people say that they did hear that, and they are aware of that phrase. That phrase is being pushed on parents to scare them, and to scare them to allow their child to proceed forth with these therapies and even these surgeries. And, that's quite unfortunate, but it is a scare tactic that they utilize on parents. And so that's why I say it's pushed on some people and some families.
The question is really a simple one as I see it. This is a law that bans medical treatment only when it is prescribed inconsistent with an individual's sex. Our argument is that treats people differently because of their sex, and therefore the court has to treat it like all other forms of sex discrimination, and that's why it's unconstitutional.
So attorneys representing the state of Tennessee.
This individual is claiming that it is unconstitutional because it is a violation of the 14th Amendment because it is based on sex discrimination, and that's simply not true. There's another perspective of it that states that this is not an unconstitutional measure because really what it is applied for, it's a safety measure, right? And it is actually based more on age than it is on sex.
Told the U.S. Supreme Court, quote, if the government's theory holds, men who identify as women could claim constitutionally based access to women's bathrooms, women's locker rooms, and women's sports. Accepting that theory would perversely erode women's rights and jeopardize landmark statutes protecting women's equal access to schools, winners' podiums, and beyond. What's your response to that?
Well, I obviously disagree with that premise that allowing transgender women into women's sports or women's bathroom is a threat to women, but it is also not the question before the court in this case. And in fact, it is a totally independent question about whether a law that bans medical care for transgender adolescents discriminates against people based on sex versus these separate cases that preceded any of these healthcare bans will continue to be litigated in the courts regardless of the outcome here.
And this individual does firmly believe that, children, okay, from 13 to 17 years old are fully capable of making these decisions. And the reason why I want to bring that up is because this tweet I found, now I did not confirm this myself through any article or based on what the attorney has said previously, but they did say, I did find this tweet the other day. I believe it's under the comment section of this video, but they say that the same ACLU attorney argues that the death penalty or solitary confinement, etc., should not be given to younger defendants below their mid-20s because their brains have not fully developed and are likely to engage in impulsive behavior. So if this is true, and, I have reasons to believe it is, personally, I can see that, especially if this is a more progressive attorney, they would believe that. But they don't think that a child between the ages of 13 to 17, obviously a very uncomfortable time period of your life. I mean, you're still developing, obviously, they can make the decision to permanently alter their bodies. That's okay. But if we want to impose even the death penalty, and whether or not you agree with the death penalty, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms, or even solitary confinement and other related punishments, and more severe punishments, that's not okay up to their mid-20s. All right. And we're talking about very heinous acts because obviously to even be charged facing the death penalty, you need to commit some pretty heinous acts without a shadow beyond a reasonable doubt. So that seems to be a very interesting case. And there's a lot of hypocrisy, as we will come to see. And hopefully if I have enough time to cover all the stories today, we will come to see that there's a lot of hypocrisy, especially among the left. Here is an article related to the story. The ACLU lawyer defends the trans procedures for minors despite acknowledging it's not the kids who are consenting. That's just the video that we just watched here. And here's some of the statistics that I want to bring up. Now, regardless of everything we just heard, whether or not you think that hormone therapy is permissible up to surgeries are permissible, because, there are people that think that there's a certain degree. I mean, I've heard leftists say that seeking surgeries is far worse and it shouldn't be allowed, but perhaps puberty blockers or certain hormone therapies are okay. So I've heard that argument before. So obviously there is a spectrum of how one would approach this question. Oh, excuse me. But that being said, we still have to acknowledge the growing real problem of detransitioners. And one of them, and this is a growing real problem, and I don't know if you guys have been noticing this, but online, especially many online spaces, and you find plethora of videos on YouTube and various interviews that are related to this phenomenon, but it particularly affects young girls who decide to be transgender and transition into a male or a boy, and then they detransition up to their early to mid-20s, sometimes late 20s. But, I mean, that is a growing phenomenon, and it is very real. And one of the main reasons for detransitioning is actually, according to this website here, they realized that their gender dysphoria was related to other issues. And that's usually the case, is that whether or not it is exacerbated or facilitated by depression, anxiety, even perhaps other mental illnesses like BPD, or I've never heard schizophrenia being related, but who knows, maybe we could throw that one in as well. But as you will come to find out as you research this topic, is that people with gender dysphoria, which is what it actually is, it's gender dysphoria. It is a mental illness. It is comorbid with plenty of other mental illnesses, especially depression. And that seems to be the leading cause for detransitioning, because later on, well into the transition, people will come to find out that they actually suffer from these other issues that they need to deal with first. And perhaps they deal with their depression, their anxiety, their trauma, their PTSD. PTSD also relates to transgenderism quite a bit. Another comorbid feature. OCD is also a really big one as well. I forgot to mention that one. If they will come to resolve those issues first, then perhaps their dysphoria, their gender dysphoria, will go away and dissolve. And that seems to be the case most of the time. And perhaps whether or not they are encouraged by their doctor to do so, I don't think so, especially with doctors today. I don't think doctors are sitting there telling them to stop their transition. But a lot of this is people coming to their own conclusions going into the transition. So that is a leading phenomenon. A second one is obviously health concerns. There's a lot of health issues that follow along with transitioning, particularly for males that transition into being a female or a woman. And a third top reason, 50%, by the way, of all detransitioners, transition did not help with dysphoria. So the transition itself, the recommended way that the American Psychological Association, all medical professionals out there will encourage you to do is to seek a transition. Even the transition itself did not work. And apparently, according to this website, up to 50% of the reasons for all detransitioners to even seek the seek to detransition found out that transitioning did not even work. In some cases, it made them feel even worse. And how else would you not feel worse when there's a plethora of health issues that follow along with it? You still feel uncomfortable in your skin. You still are going to suffer from the same OCD and depression and severe anxiety, possibly even trauma, which is also, I personally think, is a big and major cause for a lot of this dysphoria that people are facing these days. But I don't even think now, with the rise of detransitioning, it even is a question of dysphoria. Now, in the past, and this has always been a phenomenon, gender dysphoria, I'm not saying it's not a real it's not a real problem. It is a real health concern. We have documented evidence of this happening. So it's a very exceptionally rare health issue to have, but it does happen. And even more rarely, transitioning, and there's still debate about whether or not how effective it is, but for some exceptionally, we're talking about less than 2% of the human population. I think, if I remember correctly, I didn't find this statistic, it could be even less than 0.2% of individuals actually find true success in transitioning, but those people are rare, and we still should not encourage the population to do so, because these treatments are very dangerous and life-altering. But the reason I think why dysphoria is spiking, and why dysphoria isn't even a real phenomenon or problem that a lot of transitioners are facing, is because, yes, it is in fact a social contagion. It's not actually dysphoria itself. Now, this article I found from The Guardian, interestingly enough, published an article stating that this explosion of what is really behind the gender identity question and why it's primarily affecting young girls. And I'm not going to read the whole article. I know this isn't a university classroom, but what people have come to find out is that in documenting the spike in gender affirming care in the last few years, majority of them are young girls, particularly between the ages of 10 to 13 or 14 years old. What happens between that time period? This is middle school, right? Girls get their periods, they develop, they change. This is the most uncomfortable and turbulent time in a young girl's life. And so naturally, she's going to be uncomfortable with her body. I have not met a single woman out there who says that she had a very comfortable and easygoing puberty. I'm sure there's some out there that are just blessed. I certainly wasn't one of them, and I do not know a single female individual that has had a seamless and smooth puberty. And that their period was easy and the development of their body was so easy and fun. No, it's very uncomfortable actually, and far more so than it is for young boys that develop into young men. It's in some case, I'm not going to say it's traumatic, because it isn't. It isn't traumatic for girls to go through puberty, but it could be daunting and it could really impact and shape their identity. And so obviously during this very turbulent time in a young girl's life, she's going to feel quite uncomfortable. And they are trying to make cases of this by pushing this idea that now girls could be transgender. And so whether it's in a very liberal school environment or a group of friends, there is a social contagion going around, and the girl's going to feel less comfortable with her body. And so to contend with that, she is going to want to wear chest binders and hide herself, especially, sexual assaults first time in a girl's life will start to spike at this age of her life if she's in a bad environment. And unfortunately, even more so if she experiences a bad situation of the opposite sex, she's going to feel even more shame. And obviously she wants to hide her body. She doesn't want to even be considered a girl anymore. But what's dangerous about this, especially with young girls, is that this is why we are seeing the detransitioner rate just skyrocket, because a lot of them are actually biological women. Some of the time, they don't even have their breasts, and their voice cannot go back to a feminine decibel level. It's not possible. And that's really sad, actually. Sorry to be a downer for you guys, but yeah, I mean, that's a big story to talk about. Okay. This next story I want to bring up is rather interesting. It doesn't have to do with the United States. It actually has to do with the United Kingdom. But I'm going to pull up this story before we get our guest on. We have a guest coming up. His name is Monsieur Z. And we're going to be talking about American identity. And I want to pull this story up before he comes on because I think it relates to what we're going to be talking about. And it offers a very seamless transition to the interview. And also, before I proceed forward, I recommend that you guys send in a Rumble rant if you want me to read your comments, whether it's related to the show or otherwise, or if you just want to ask me a question, please send me a Rumble rant as best you can. That would be very appreciated. That's right. I'm trying to make good use of my sound effects. And I see a pretty active chat as well. So that's really good. Let me see if I can read some of your guys' comments. Gender dysphoria and autogynephilia. Autogynephilia is a condition that is by nature predatory, says Barney Styles. Just now he commented. Very good point, Barney. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I should have mentioned that. I forgot to mention that. It is a very contentious question, right? That is the autogynephilia question when it pertains to this issue. The transgender issue is very unique because it is a question of identity, and what society is doing is that it's pushing it as a question of identity when a lot of the times, and I'm not going to say majority of the times, okay, but a lot of the times it's more of a question of sexual perversion. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm sorry, but it's true. A lot of the times it's a question of sexual perversion, and autogynephilia, for those that don't know, you can look it up. I don't think I have to explain it very much. And I presume those that are watching are aware of what autogynephilia is. But yes, Barney, I would venture to say that a good portion of transgenders, particularly men who are transitioning to becoming women, are autogynephiliacs. And I've seen this question being shared more on right-wing Twitter and other online spaces, and that's good to see because at least we're having the conversation. But that question offends a lot of people because it's very uncomfortable, because it is, you're kind of like, you're asking the question that no one wants to talk about, is that it's not so much a question of identity or becoming who you are. It's more of a question of whether or not you are perverted and you just want to fulfill your sexual fetish and live your sexual fetish out in the public. And that, of course, brings into question about what is considered a sexual fetish and whether or not you're practicing these fetishes in public. And if that's not okay, what are other fetishes? And it's just a whole pipeline of that I would rather not go down right now, but it is true. It is very much related to autogynephilia. I would agree with you. Okay, we have a donation by Nelson65, $5. He wrote, "It's all about money." But first of all, thank you for the donation. First donation of the night. Thank you so much, Nelson65. Oh, don't want to play that twice. Nelson65 wrote, "It's all about money. The doctors make a fortune." Yes, just like what my sound effect just said, it is a question of money. It's a multifaceted problem. Some of it has to do with autogynephilia and sexual perversion. Others, I mean, it's about big pharma and doctors making money. This is true. Obviously, doctors, they go through like a checklist of diagnoses and oftentimes are encouraged to diagnose some things over others as a way to push forth drugs and make more money. So that is very much the case as well. Obviously, a very multifaceted and complicated issue, but I am just keep on talking, and I want to bring up my next story here because I think this one's very interesting and it's important to talk about, and I am a little behind on my schedule. So let me get these stories up for you guys. So I don't know if you guys noticed this, but in the UK, there have been, this is also like a good offensive statistics segment. Let me bring this up. Okay. Bear with me here. Goodbye, England, writes this random person on Twitter. It was a fascinating and memorable 1,000 odd years, but apparently, new statistic has just come out, everyone. Top 10 boys' names in the United Kingdom. Number 1 this year is Mohammed. Number 1 this year for the United Kingdom, the most popular name is Mohammed. May peace be upon him. What do you guys think about that? This is obviously raising a lot of questions about what is considered UK, what's considered a UK national. Okay, we can stop playing that now. There's a lot going on with this conversation. Okay, obviously, if you guys aren't aware, the demographics in the United Kingdom are changing, and it's making a lot of UK nationals and Indigenous people quite uncomfortable because they feel like they are being replaced. And I came across this tweet this morning by Turning Point UK. Yes, Turning Point does have a organization in the United Kingdom. I think it's the only other country than the US that has Turning Point. I believe so. But they made this tweet here, and they say, Mohammed is officially the top name for baby boys in England and Wales. We are being replaced. That's big. They are talking about literal demographic replacement and a replacement theory. The Great Replacement, if you will. But I know they've had events of the same name, the Great Replacement. But yeah, they're just coming out in the open talking about this. So I thought, since Turning Point's talking about, we can talk about it here. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have, frankly, especially if you're from the UK, but obviously it's going to bleed into issues relating to the United States as well. As with the Trump administration coming in, we have a lot of questions about what is considered an American. With the immigration crisis happening and the talk of obviously building the wall again and also making certain policies to limit immigration into the United States, the question remains, what is considered a true American citizen or not? Now, obviously, there is a big distinction between the United States and the United Kingdom. I mean, the United Kingdom has its own true heritage and a long-held history, far longer than the United States. And it has its really own indigenous people in the UK, more so than what the United States have, at least for the ones that won. Obviously, there's indigenous people or Indians in the United States, but they did not win that war. So yeah, the question does remain, what is considered displacement, what can be tolerated as displacement, or what you even consider as displacement, and a demographic change. And there seems to be a massive demographic change happening in the UK. And I found it quite interesting that Turning Point UK is just straight up talking about this. So let's take a listen. That is so loud. Oh my God. Hold on a second. I don't know if you guys can hear that on my end. That is horribly loud. Let me make that listen. So I want to ask you guys and leave you guys with this question, ask you this question. What do you consider, forget the UK, obviously, they have their own history, they have their own problems to deal with. As far as the United States is concerned, what do you consider a true American national? Now, I do like to believe in the melting pot idea, that anyone can be American as long as they become a citizen and they bring forth certain values that could be attributed to Americanism, that not only, provide for the economy and contribute to the economy, and but also posits Western values that are best and have been traditionally been best at in developing the nation. And a lot of that does seem to align more with the Christian heritage that the United States has, but as well as other cultural heritages that came into this country, took over it, and helped develop the civilization of this country. And that isn't just purely Western European. I mean, there are major differences in cultures, obviously, but many people came together to build this country. So, you know, I do want to ask you, though, what do you actually consider an American? Because with the conversation about immigration policies coming forth, and there's going to be a lot, and that is a defining question of the MAGA movement, I want to leave you with that question. And that is a question that I want to be asking our upcoming guest, Monsieur Z, as well as many other questions related to what he covers on his YouTube channel. And after the interview, I will put up his YouTube channel and his other socials for you guys to look at. I think you're really going to like this interview, so I'm going to go on a commercial break here, and I'm going to see if he's available right now and try to pull him in, so you guys want to stay tuned for that. And I also highly encourage you to please donate a Rumble rant. That would be very much appreciated. Obviously, I won't be able to read them during the interview, but I will read all of them after the interview. So please donate a Rumble rant. It goes a long way in helping the show, okay? We're going to get more stuff on the show and the better lighting, better decorations, obviously. And yeah, I think then also if you just want me to answer a random question that you have for me, that would also be very much appreciated too. So anyway, we have good viewership, decent viewership on Rumble, and decent on Twitter. So that's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go on commercial break now and try to see if he's available and pull him in.
Well, here comes Daniela like Marilyn with a twist. She's got a master's degree and a style you can't resist. On Culturama, baby, we're shaking up the scene. So hit that like, make it click, you know what we mean. Like and subscribe, come on, don't delay. With Daniela at the helm, we're leading the way. It's Culturama, taking back tomorrow today.
You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock, we are forcing behaviors.
Mao ordered his citizens to throw off the four olds. Old thinking, old culture, old customs, and old habits. So, your whole life went in the garbage overnight, no biggie. And those who resisted were attacked by an army of purifiers called the Red Guard, who went around the country putting dunce caps on people. Yeah. Who didn't take to being a new kind of mortal being.
If you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted.
Well, things haven't been so sweet for Ben & Jerry's after the company posted an anti-American tweet, a few of them, on the 4th of July. The ice cream makers declared the United States was founded on stolen indigenous land.
Well, someone should tell Target that, because they're now selling swimsuits with tuckums in the women's section of the store. And they even have a line just for kids.
Yeah, we're going to reach out to Ben & Jerry's and ask them how they can live with themselves as they operate a multi-billion-dollar company on stolen land while declaring other people give up their so-called stolen land.
This is the child section. This is literally the kids section. I'm next to a literal onesie that says whatever the hell that means. We have glad you came out, and I'm so happy that you're queer. In the kids section. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry, but pride and toddler don't belong in the same sentence.
Good news! Starbucks will offer its workers reimbursement of travel expenses related to accessing abortion and gender-affirming procedures.
Kyle Rittenhouse was seen wearing a Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt, and they wanted to distance themselves from that individual. Key employees at the company also were donating to Democrats. Hafer doubled down on throwing many in his base under the bus, describing them as racist and a repugnant group of people.
liberty lovers, stop.
On the online right and other political movements here on this segment. And today I have with me Monsieur Z. Thank you for joining us, Monsieur. You're a big-time YouTuber. I love your videos. You talk about politics and history, I believe, and you can correct me and maybe talk about other things as well. But I love the topics that you cover, and you talk about especially your issues surrounding politics in the United States. But I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself for the audience here today and tell us a little bit about your channel and where people can find you.
Howdy, everybody. My name's Dean. Of course, you introduced me. My channel is Monsieur Z. It's a French word, M-O-N-S-I-E-U-R. I just say Monsieur because it's easier for a lot of people. I'm a historian. I cover a lot of history, politics, geopolitics, political science, those sorts of things. Something I've been looking at recently, especially in the wake of the election, is, and I spoke about this in the preceding couple of years as well, the direction America is going insofar as policy-wise, and whether Trump or Biden at the time was going to win. I was saying there's some very clear markers on both sides that sort of indicate where we're going. And I said, sort of by and large, it seems like we're moving in a more self-sufficient direction. We can get into that a little bit more. I don't want to take up that whole time there. But you guys can find me on Instagram under Dean of New York. YouTube channel, of course, is Monsieur Z. And I'm on Twitter under the handle US of Z.
Yeah, of course. And I'm glad that you're already diving into the topics that we're going to be talking about. So that's great. And
I couldn't help it.
Yeah, I know. That's the nature of the show. And you know what? It's your moment to shine. So go ahead and talk about it if you want. But I did want to ask you this question about what you think Americanism is. And in the previous segment, we talked about how Muhammad is becoming the top name for baby boys in the UK. And, you know, some people are a little vexed about that. And so that brought me into a bigger question about what Americanism is, because with like older countries in Europe, obviously there is more of that national identity, right, in that history of that nation. Whereas with the United States, it's a little bit more complicated. And, you know, as a historian and someone that is fairly involved and understands politics, I wanted to ask you what you think Americanism is, and especially with the policy issue of immigration that we're going to be facing. It's going to be a really contentious topic here, and I wanted to get your take on that and how you define what an American national is, other than just for the legal reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Americanism, insofar as American identity is concerned, is a very complex topic, and even within the right, you'd assume that this is a matter where it's the right versus the left, and that's where the contention is and how you define an American. But this goes to a deeper level in the fact that what an American is has been a contentious topic, arguably since the country's founding, because people have this impression that, oh, well, you know, at founding we were one unified nation, and it's only over time, whether it's because of the Civil War, whether it's because of religious migration, you know, the rise in the Catholic population, whether it's because of immigration from the Third World, that identity sort of became diluted. But really, since our inception, you've had at least three main identities in the United States that over time just sort of grew and grew and grew. Now, foundationally, there's an overarching sort of Anglo-American identity, sort of the WASP identity that you could say, but even that's sort of a broad thing. Today, that segment of the population comprises maybe about, let's say, 30% of the total population. It's not a big enough contingent of the population to define the broader culture. If you look at a country similar to the United States, which are large, contiguous land empires that are relatively diverse in their population, you know, say Russia, China, India, all these countries are far more homogenous than the United States. You could look at Russia, where it's 80% ethnic Russian, 80% Christian. Most of the population speaks Russian. There's a unity there. China is 90% Han. 90% of the population observes Chinese folk religion. And I think where they're most divided is in their language. The dominant language in China, while it is Mandarin, that's subdivided into a bunch of other languages as well, with Pekingese being only around 30%. Even India as well. Like, India has a massive level of religious homogeneity through being 80% Hindu. In the United States, we don't have homogeneity on just about any level except for maybe language, which is only at 75% Americans speak English. But if we want to talk about ethnicity, well, again, 30% of the population falls in that WASP category. And that's if we're assuming broadly, including people who have mixed backgrounds. Only 65% or 60% are Christian. We break that down, only about 35% are Protestant. Break that down even further, only about 11% are Baptist. The United States has no central unifying identity like a lot of these other countries have. And that's a bit of a problem because the United States is a federation. It's meant to have the situation where you do have various populations sort of having a level of autonomy. But this is something that you had mentioned to me in the DMs with the subject we're going to talk about later, is there is no real representation for groups in America. You have representation for states, of course. But the groups that comprise America, America being a very divided country, there's no real representation for those populations.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer. Very complicated, obviously, and it seems to be that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are basing your definitions, it seems like, of what you think true Americanism is mostly more so on the religious heritage of the United States, because obviously, you know, ethnic displacement is going to happen one way or the other, it seems like, as we proceed forward. But would you say that it's mostly predetermined on the religious heritage of the nation? I just want to make that clear.
I wouldn't even say it's a matter of that. It's a multitude of factors that do come together. Religion and cultural background factor into that as well, but these are all things that come together to make up a people. It's the shared experiences as well that come to define, you know, what a population is. And for smaller countries like France, like Germany, Japan, they're under a very selective number of circumstances that's like, yeah, we can come together. We all sort of agree on these things. America's a massive, massive land empire. If you look at countries similar to us, we don't have the same conditions that they would have to allow us to sort of come together, nor do we have the conditions that a smaller country would have to sort of force this environmental pressure to have a shared identity.
I see. Okay. And as far as representation is concerned, I do know, and I found this on your YouTube channel, the link to a website called Utahism. And it seems to be that you're arguing, and I want you to actually first explain to our audience what Utahism is, but it seems as though you're proposing a better way to represent the American population and its diversity. Is that correct?
Yes. So Utahism is, for lack of a better word, an ideology I came up with. And it's sort of, the base premise of Utahism is that every people group in the United States deserves a state of their own. The states of the United States, because America is a federation, the premise of federation is you want to provide representation to the people who inhabit that country. And of course you have 50 states. But the problem with those states is that they're drawn arbitrarily. The state doesn't represent anything. It's like, okay, here's 4 lines on a map and govern that as you will. You can have your own governor, your own constitution, your own laws and police force. But okay, what if you jumble all these people together in one box, then what good is it? It would be like if you drew a square in the middle of Europe and said, this is a country, you know, that's govern that as you will. It just wouldn't work. So the story with Utahism and where it sort of gets its name from is the history of Utah and how it was founded. The fact that you had the Mormon population, you know, like them or hate them, they went over to that territory there and they carved out a homeland for themselves. I went over to Salt Lake City for a time. I'm a hiker. I love hiking. And as I was hiking, I come across what looked almost like a field trip of sorts. And the women chaperones, they stopped to tell the kids a story of the pioneers who came to settle that land. And they're almost in tears. Like they are passionate about their lord. And the male chaperone, he and I have a long conversation, and sort of ends with, I'm kind of envious of what you guys have. You've built really a state where you determine your own laws. You are the masters of your own destiny here. Me, I'm of a Italian Catholic background, and it's like we don't really have that same thing. I mean, we have a large population in New York and New Jersey, but even then, like we don't come together to do that same thing where it's like we have a state of our own. You know, we govern it as we will. I've traveled all over the country. I've spoken to people from all over. And with maybe a handful of exceptions, you see the same issue all over the country where people feel like, I'm not represented by my own state. I need to move somewhere else. There's no home for me here. And that's one of main drivers I've seen polarization all over the United States. This sense of not feeling represented, the feeling of not having a homeland of your own, where the culture and laws and history and just the general community feels like something that you can relate to and where you can feel at home.
Yeah, interesting. I did also go to Salt Lake City before, and it's a beautiful city. I was actually very impressed, first of all, with how clean it was. I was someone that comes from Washington State and is fairly familiar with the Pacific Northwest major cities. It is not the same. So that was very impressive to me, but also the people there were exceptionally friendly. I went to Temple Square and I toured it, and a very unique experience. There's no city really like it that I visited. Very unique, but yeah, it's interesting that you do base your idea off of the identity of Utah, because you're right. There does seem to be like this unifying culture. I went to their legislative building, and I don't know if you saw it, but they had like those bee honeycomb structures. Yeah. And that was like all over in the legislative building because that's their symbol, right? Is the bee, I believe, having like kind of like this hive mentality. And I mean, I'm an ardent individualist, so I reacted the way I reacted to it. But I did find it interesting and kind of beautiful in a way, because you're right, they do have like this encompassing culture that is very unique just to that state. And you kind of see those other states, but not as much as it is with Utah. But I do want to ask you though, in concerning that, do you think though that is unique just to Utah, given their history with the initial the Mormon settlements there that developed the state the way it is? How feasible do you think it is to implement something like Utahism in the United States, given how eclectic or how diverse other states may be?
Well, it's a simple matter of readjusting the borders. That's really the ultimate end goal of Utahism. It's a single issue ideology. Just readjust the borders to reflect populations instead of being arbitrary lines. Because we've adjusted the borders for just about everything, election districts, counties, what have you. But we've never really adjusted state borders to meet population, which is strange when you think about it, because it's like, we change our voting districts like every 10 years to match the census, but not state borders. So there's multiple ways to go about it so far as realistic solutions, but I think the most practical solution, it is a difficult it's a constitutional amendment, really, where this is something that we undertake sort of simultaneously with the census. Insofar as, is this a unique situation for Utah, where is it a product of their culture, or is it a product of the fact that they have representation? The situation with Utah is not ultimately exclusive. Vermont is a very good example of this. One of the jokes you sometimes hear is, there's no blue states, there's just blue cities. It's like, no, have you seen Utah? No, not Utah. Have you seen Vermont? Right. Vermont is a totally blue state. They have their own distinct culture, and much like Utah, they've sort of had this determination of what they wanted to be from the get-go. They chose to join the United States, and Texas as well is sort of similar, but in a very different way, because they are a very large state and they've had a lot of change over time. But Vermont has basically remained fairly consistent from the get-go, and their ideology has remained very similar as well, where it's this almost hybridization of, well, actually, I should say, it's if you took the Canadian-style politics and scaled it down to a smaller, more efficient state, where it could actually be kind of practical, and that is how Vermont works. You see a similar thing as well with West Virginia, where, of course, West Virginia seceded from Virginia to become its own thing. Culturally, the population's very similar. Environmentally, they're all under very similar circumstances. Economically, they all have very similar. They have a staple economy there. The issue with West Virginia, why West Virginia has not been successful, is because of sort of federal situation. West Virginia's history has largely been built up on resource extraction, and they've been dependent on that. When we sort of dampened that down, both for environmental reasons and because we started exporting our business abroad, that hampered the state at a local level as well. So as much local authority as the state can have, and as much influence as that population has in setting the policy they want, there's not too much they can do if their cash cow has basically been exported.
And considering what has been going on with immigration lately, and I do want to ask you this because that's the natural next question, is that with, you know, certain populations of certain cultures coming into the country, a lot of which is unaccounted for with the migration crisis that we're facing right now. Hopefully that could be dealt with the coming administration. At least that's what President or future President Trump and previous President Trump has said he will do. Do you think Utah-ism is possible, concerning that we are really experiencing a major demographic shift just culturally and ethnically with you know, migrants coming in from the southern border, as well as some Arab nations, because, you know, as I do believe in, obviously, on the, if anyone that has read my work or has watched my show, they at least have an understanding that I'm a big proponent of Western values. And Western values is a very, it could be considered a very like abstract term in some ways, because like exactly what type of European Western values are we referring to? But when I say Western values, I have like a very overarching sense of what that means, and that is just the values of Europeanism and specifically Western Europe, but that has came into the United States and has been maintained. And obviously there has been an evolution of that as the United States grew gradually in its history. But there's still that sense of that European sentiment, or like that Western value sentiment. And, you know, with the that Arab nation ban is what they call with President Trump's first term. That drew a lot of ire with people because, you know, he prevented the immigration of certain predominantly Muslim states, countries, I mean. So the question then is, like, I want to ask you is, considering the potential, and I don't even necessarily have an issue with demographic change as much as I do with ideological change, do you think there is a greater issue specifically if we gain migrants or immigrants coming in from predominantly Muslim nations, similar to what the UK is seeing right now? And would Utah-ism be even feasible concerning that?
Yeah, so I do think this is an issue. Well, there's levels to this as well. I always say that with any situation, there's multiple pathways to any type of victory that you might want to achieve. When it comes to the situation of the United States culture, and I'll get into how this applies to Utah-ism as well, the situation in the United States has, as I said, over the years, the cultures have just been compounding and compounding. There's been more and more and more. You started off with maybe 3, which grew to maybe 6 to around 15 at this point. And then, you know, who knows how many more over time. People also think about this in the short term, like, oh, you know, these people are coming over and they're bringing the traditions of their country over and they're going to stay that way. Cultures evolve over time. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how much does it linger? And especially if you have something that's very, very divergent, that lingers for a long time. You know, just using Italian Americans for an example, we are pretty proud of our heritage, but we have started to intermingle. But it's not like we're intermingling and all becoming very anglicized. We intermingle a lot with fellow Catholics. So you see a lot of Irish Italians, Hispanic and Italians, Polish and Italians. Those mixtures happen a lot. And that's sort of creating a new ethnogenesis there. How these other populations will evolve over time within the United States and become new identities, there's not really much telling, but, you know, it adds to sort of the menagerie of American culture and distinction. And what the problem with that is that can often lead to some conflict. It often leads to a situation where nobody can be satisfied because you have this population's vying for policy A, that population's vying for policy B. And, you know, large coalitions get formed by the Republicans and Democrats to try to appease as many of these populations as possible, but they're not all going to get what they want. Now, where Utah-ism factors into this is Utah-ism actually does tackle the situation of long-term demographic change if that continues, as well as add sort of a, safeguard against exploitations of having just mass immigration for personal gain reasons. So Utah-ism is very adaptive. The premise would be to have a regular readjustment of borders with every census or every 2 censuses, whatever the period might be. So what I say is the initial change to the borders, if they're all done at once, every single state, assuming that this isn't done on a state-by-state basis, which is also possible. If you do that only the initial readjustment is going to be significant. Everything after that is going to be maybe, we moved 2 miles to add to this state, or we adjusted this state by 2 miles, because, population change that way is kind of gradual.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't adapted our borders since we've been around as a country. So that's part of the issue.
Okay.
The second issue is, or not the second issue, but the safeguard there is, if you have a state that says, oh, we want more representation in Congress, so we're going to advocate for more mass immigration because we want to grow our population. Well, with Utahism, what happens is, if you have a population that's like, we're distinct enough, we want to have a state of our own, you don't represent us, we want to put forward our own policy, well, they can advocate for state. So that incentive to basically add more people to your state who don't vote the way you do is sort of eliminated. And this expands to, as I said, it's not just a matter of Republican and Democrats. Some of the Democrats do this because it's like, oh, let's bring in more immigrants because they'll vote Democrat. Well, now it's a matter of like, hey, we want secular law. And it's like, well, the Islamic immigrants you want Sharia. So you guys are sort of going to be in a contention there because they're going to want their own state, and you guys want your own state. So there'll be a separation there. And they will not only lose land, but they will also potentially lose representation in Congress, because that new state that's been formed might have some of their population in there as well. So there's the adaptability there, as well as discouraging sort of this promotion of migration, both within the states, across the states, and to the states from outside.
Okay, interesting. So there's a really big inbuilt system to adapt with that. That's really interesting. And I do like the adaptability of that. Would you call an ideology Utahism, or would you just call it just like a political process in the United States?
I've been calling it an ideology, but frankly, this is something that has existed for a while, because if you look at the history, states have said, we want to change our borders this way. Mm-hmm. You've had statehood proposals. It's just been a thing for a long while. But I gave a name to it and sort of an idea for how it could be implemented on a large scale.
Yeah, and as a Washington local, a Washingtonian, if you will, it's interesting, even so here in this state, there's a big divide between Western Washington and Eastern Washington in terms of like political ideology and political party alignment. You definitely can see the clash of cultures even within just this state, and I'm sure it happens many others. I kind of want to shift gears because you did mention Republican Democrats. I wanted to ask you a question about this. And earlier in the stream, I talked about, I don't know if you know, but David Hogg is thinking or considering to run for chair for the DNC. Very interesting development there, but it really made me question the future of the Democratic Party and also party politics in the United States moving forward within the next 4 to 8 plus years. And that is seeing with the failure of the election for the Democrats. I think they really have a come to Jesus moment in a way that they didn't really have one before, in that I think the Democratic Party is very corporate and is an establishment, and they have to really contend with their growing populist base. And I personally think and predict that it may be seeing a split, maybe not an official split by name, but a stark ideological split. And we've been seeing this happen actually within the last few presidential cycles as well, between the establishment types and the populist or non-establishment types, similar to what you have already been seeing in the Republican Party, except the Republican Party seems to, for the most part, go in line with the MAGA movement at this point, especially since Trump won. And there is that sentiment of populism now, but which is conflated with MAGAism at this point. But my question is to you, what do you think is the future of specifically the Democratic Party in the United States, as well as the Republican Party within the next 10, even 20 years?
So I actually had a video that I put together on this subject. It's very interesting because the Democrats do have multiple pathways to victory once again, where on the local level, I think it's sort of inevitable that you will see the progressive wing of the party gain in more popularity. That's what the future of the party wants. That's what their young demographic wants. If you ask one of the young Democrats, it's like, what do you think of American politics? They'll say something along the lines of, America only has 2 right-wing parties. There's no real left-wing party. They talk about this insofar as the economics specifically. They like guys like Bernie. They like people like AOC. They want to move more in that direction, but the old guard of the party is holding them back. Now, because you had Biden, I say, is not perfectly representative of the old establishment. He was sort of a hybridized thing. He went in there with like his New Deal agenda. He's like, I want to be like FDR. I want to do all these grand things. So he was able to get broad appeal. But, of course, they got rid of him. There's not really another Joe Biden out there. And they replaced him with Kamala Harris, which, people on the right said, oh, she's the most left-wing candidate out there. Not really. Like, if you look at her policy, it was a lot of rehashing of Obama-era and Clinton-era policy. The younger demographic is extremely, extremely disenchanted with the old Democrat establishment. And I think insofar as local races, insofar as congressional races, you're going to see that progressive wing just rise up in power. Now, on the national level, when it comes to presidential elections, you have a split on this. You have the potential to run a more left-wing candidate who, I'm not sure who they would run for president at this point, but the safe bet, the moderate bet, is someone like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who has appeal both among Democrats and Republicans. However, if you have a dark horse progressive candidate, somebody who's like Bernie Sanders 2.0, who is performing well in the presidential election, or I should say performing well in the nomination process, and they scrap him for someone like Josh Shapiro, you could have a Bernie Sanders scenario in 2028 where, similar to what happened in 2016, where a lot of young voters are like, oh, you betrayed us. You took away our progressive candidate for the establishment shill. We're not voting this time. And then, of course, the Republicans win once again. But if they stick to their guns and still go with a moderate like Josh Shapiro, their chances are better. But I think what a lot of the younger demographic is thinking at this point is we're going to go hardcore on our policy. Like, we have compromised for too long. The Republicans are getting far too much ground, and we need to just double down on what we're standing on. It's an unpopular position, but it's a powerful position. It's an effective position. And if they do gain power, they're going to be able to go in there with the policy they want. It's a different trajectory than what Trump did, but much like with what happened with Trumpism, it was basically a natural evolution of the parties in, sort of a dissatisfaction with the establishment that was in the Republican Party and which still exists in the Democratic Party.
Okay, it's a very good answer. And yes, as you mentioned, you do have a video on my question on that topic. And for those of you that want to go and get more details about what Monsieur Z has to say, please go to his channel. It's just titled Monsieur Z, and I will have the page up after the next commercial break. We are running low on our time here, so I want to thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it, and love your videos, and thank you for being responsive to me in the DMs.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And again, it's just Monsieur Z on YouTube, and it was Dean of New York on Instagram, correct?
Yes.
And then on Twitter is what's your Twitter again?
US of Z.
US of Z. So I'll be pulling those up for you guys. I'm going to go on a commercial break because we still have to cover the Daniel Penny case coming up, and that's going to be a big one, so I want to have enough time for that. So thank you so much, Monsieur Z, for coming on. I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
You too. Take care.
Well, here comes Daniela like Marilyn with a twist. She's got a master's degree and a style you can't resist. On Culturama, baby, we're shaking up the scene. So hit that like, make it click, you know what we mean. Like and subscribe, come on, don't delay. With Daniela at the helm, we're leading the way. It's Culturama, taking back tomorrow today.
You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock, we are forcing behaviors.
Mao ordered his citizens to throw off the four olds. Old thinking, old culture, old customs, and old habits. So, your whole life went in the garbage overnight, no biggie. And those who resisted were attacked by an army of purifiers called the Red Guard, who went around the country putting dunce caps on people. Yeah, who didn't take to being a new kind of mortal being.
If you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted.
Well, things haven't been so sweet for Ben & Jerry's after the company posted an anti-American tweet, a few of them, on the 4th of July. The ice cream makers declared the United States was founded on stolen indigenous land.
Well, someone should tell Target that because they're now selling swimsuits with tuckums in the women's section of the store. And they even have a line just for kids.
Yeah, we're going to reach out to Ben & Jerry's and ask them how they can live with themselves as they operate a multi-billion-dollar company on stolen land while declaring other people give up their so-called stolen land.
This is the child section. This is literally the kids section. I'm next to a literal onesie that says whatever the hell that means. We have glad you came out, and I'm so happy that you're queer. In the kids section. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry, but pride and toddler don't belong in the same sentence.
Good news! Starbucks will offer its workers reimbursement of travel expenses related to accessing abortion and gender-affirming procedures.
Kyle Rittenhouse was seen wearing a Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt, and they wanted to distance themselves from that individual. Key employees at the company also were donating to Democrats. Hafer doubled down on throwing many in his base under the bus, describing them as racist and a repugnant group of people.
Hey, Liberty lovers, stop scrolling.
All right, we are back. What did you guys think about that interview? I loved it. I think Utah-ism is an ideology that is worthy of consideration, especially, you know, with some of the issues that we have had with representation in this country. It really does pique the interest, and I really wanted to get Dean on here to talk with him and ask him in depth about what Utah-ism is, as well as just his opinions on Americanism and so forth. Did you guys like the interview? I think you did. I saw a lot of positive comments. Let me read a donation, because I did get a donation in during the interview. It's from Barney Styles. Thank you so much, Barney, for the $5. It was sent 20 minutes ago. I hope you're still here, Barney, to see me read the comment. He says, I have nothing to say, but crypto has been good for me this week. Wonderful, Barney. I'm glad that things are looking up for you. And your $5 goes a long way. So let's see. There we go. Thank you so much, you guys. And I want to bring up Monsieur Z's YouTube here, like I had promised. So let me pull that up. Okay, so this is his YouTube. It's just, if you guys are interested, if you want to know about his opinions more in depth, this is his YouTube. It is just, you can find it under Monsieur Z or at Monsieur Dean. Over 200,000 subscribers. That's phenomenal. Go subscribe to him today if you're interested. And he has a lot of in-depth videos on history and politics. I want to watch this one. I'm going to have to watch this one after this stream. I was meaning to watch this one. It was posted 2 days ago. Every Islamic sect explained. But he has a lot on Trump and the state of American politics. And he makes very interesting predictions as well. So please go check him out and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, just a quick note, if you go under this like 5 more links tab, it will open up this little window here, and if you scroll down and you go to Utah-ism Explained, that's a very neat website here. He made this, how cool is that? He made a really cool website about Utah-ism, and it just goes in depth explaining it, and I think that's very helpful, because you have people online that will just posit ideas like this, but they don't really have a good explanation of what it means, especially as it pertains to politics. So I was really thankful to find this website. So if you are interested in Utah-ism and forwarding its principles, go ahead to his YouTube channel, and under the About section, if you look at 5 more links, scroll down right there, Utahism. He also has a Reddit page for all of you Redditors out there. I wonder how many Redditors even watch my show. There you go. So there's that. Okay. Also, before I continue with the Daniel Penny stuff, I have only 20 minutes left, so I'm going to have to go through this, and I still want to talk about the United Health CEO passing away and getting killed after the assassination. I don't know if I'm going to have time for that this stream, because I'm running thin here, and I do want to keep my time short because we're going to have the Liberty Tonight show after this, and I want you guys to be able to watch that as well. Also part of the 4 Liberty Network. The Liberty Tonight show is a comedy nightly show involved with the 4 Liberty Network, and if you haven't watched it already, I highly encourage you to find them at Liberty Tonight on Rumble and other platforms. So I'm going to do my best to keep the time to end it at 7 my time. But before I get to the Daniel Penny stuff, go to the Culturama shop. Christmas is upon us. Christmas is upon us, and I wanted to show you guys this really cool pillow I got. I finally got my very own Culturama pillow, and we have already sold multiples of these, and I'm gonna say this is a very unique, good quality pillow. I got the small one for myself personally. I don't like really big pillows, but you can get them in multiple sizes, and how cool is that? It has the logo and everything. I think that's pretty neat. And so if you want it's very soft, very good quality. So if you want yourself this little pillow for you or your Chihuahua, I'm sure I have Chihuahua watchers on my stream just like me, consider getting a Culturama pillow right here. It's very comfortable, and I'm going to have it actually as a decoration. Okay, never mind. I'm going to do that after because I don't want things to fall over. Anyway, go to the AP for Liberty shop. There's a link, or just forlibertyshop.com. If you go to the Culturama collection, there's multiple collections, but go to the Culturama collection, and if you want yourself an atomic pillow, there it is, the atomic pillow. We also have sweatshirts. We have beanies for all the Tim Pool fans out there. We have candles for the holiday season. We have mugs, and for those that didn't see, I was nonchalantly sipping on it earlier this stream. Here's the mug. Now this mug is beautiful. I love using this thing. I'm so proud of it. All my coffee, water, juice, whatever, milk. If you're a milk drinker like me, it's empty. I already drank all my coffee. Anyway, please consider getting the mug as well. I think you guys will enjoy that. Anyway, hold on a second. Okay. Just want to make sure everything, got all my stories up here. Barney is a more culturally relevant story. Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna be bringing that story up here as well. Just making sure, reading my comments here, making sure I don't lose any texts sent into the show. Okay. Hang on a second. Okay, cool. All right, we have pretty decent viewership on Rumble today. Send in the last few Rumble rants while you can, folks, so I can ask me anything. Ask me anything you want. I will answer it. I'm not going to be unleashing the beast tonight, though. Leo wants a break. I brought him on last stream. I think I will bring him on maybe next stream. The poor guy needs a break, you guys. The beast will not be unleashed today. But hopefully in the next stream, if you join, I will bring out my dog as well. Okay, so I'm going to just go through the story. I think it is very important. So Daniel Penny, obviously, for those that don't know, do I have to explain what Daniel Penny is? The death of Jordan Neely drew the ire of many United States citizens because he had apparently died in the arms of Daniel Penny, who was just trying to protect the public. Jordan Neely, the victim here, I suppose you could say, was acting rather dangerously in the subway systems of New York. And Daniel Penny, who was a Marine, happened to be there, and he took advantage of the situation. He took control of the situation, and so he needed to protect the people around him, and what better way than to step in? And what's really important to note, and I do want to note this, is that both the prosecution and the defense thinks that Daniel Penny took full advantage in defending the public. And he was right to do so. It's just that the prosecution is arguing that he had just applied a little too much force. So I just want to bring that out there. If you read the details of the case, you will come to find out that both the defense and the prosecution both agreed that it was in his right to step in and intervene, to take advantage, to take control, and to protect those people around him that were in danger. And it very well could have been that Jordan Neely was going to put a lot of people in danger. He was already acting irrationally. He threw his coat at people. He started yelling and acting in a very, frankly, in a frightening way. And the bystanders had said that they really felt like their lives were threatened in that moment. And they felt a danger. And so Daniel Penny stepped in and, as a Marine, would take control of that situation. And so here we are trying to face the situation, and that we have someone that, whether or not you want to consider a vigilante situation, right? I think there's some debate about that, but considering how the legal system in the United States and how law enforcement in the United States has been, frankly, failing in several parts of the country, that people are going to have to take a vigilantism approach to some very scary situations. And, you know, this is obviously not a really fun or funny topic, but it is a very serious and important one, because I think what happens to Daniel Penny is going to take a great role in defining how we speak about and how we approach legislation concerning public safety and law enforcement. And so what I'm trying to get at here, and the point that I'm laboriously trying to get at here, is that if we were a country that really did take public safety seriously, we would, I don't agree with this tweet. I don't think we need to call him a hero in this situation personally, but I don't think he needs to be charged in the way that he has been charged. He has been charged on 2 accounts. Second degree, what was it? I gotta check my notes here. Hold on. Charged with, I want to be accurate, charged with second degree manslaughter and homicide of the negligent variety. So that is what he's facing, and he could be facing up to about 15 years in prison if he is found guilty. And obviously he is pleading not guilty. And I do want to play this video. This is Daniel Penny himself, bring forth his case and how he perceived the situation play out. So let's take a listen to this.
East Village in Manhattan, so I take the subway multiple times a day. In this instance, I was coming from school. I got out of class around 2:15, and I took I was at J Street Metro Tech, took the Uptown F train. At 2nd Avenue, a man came on, stumbled on, appeared to be on drugs. The doors closed.
Not only was Jordan Neely on drugs, which it has been found to be accurate information, he also suffered from schizophrenia following the death of his mother years previous to this incident. And so this man was not only in drugs, he was very mentally ill. And when you combine those two situations, that can pose a great risk to the public.
And he ripped his jacket off and threw it at the people sitting down to my left. I was listening to music at the time. And he was yelling, so I took my headphones out to hear what he was yelling. And the 3 main threats that he repeated over and over was, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm prepared to go to jail for life, and I'm willing to die." You know, this was a scary situation. And Mr. Neely came on, he was threatening. I'm 6'2", and he was taller than me. So and there's a common misconception that Marines don't get scared. We're actually taught one of our core values is courage. And courage is not the absence of fear, but how you handle fear. And, I was scared for myself, but I looked around, I saw women and children. He was yelling in their faces, saying these threats. I couldn't just sit still. Some people say that I was holding on to Mr. Neely for 15 minutes. This is not true. I mean, between stops is only a couple minutes. So the whole interaction lasted less than 5 minutes. Some people say I was trying to choke him to death, which is also not true. I was trying to restrain him. You can see in the video there's a clear rise and fall of his chest, indicating that he's breathing. I'm trying to restrain him from him being able to carry out the threats. And then some people say that this was about race, which is absolutely ridiculous. I didn't see a black man threatening passengers. I saw a man threatening passengers. A lot of whom were people of color.
Yeah, exactly. So that's also the very frustrating aspect of this whole story, is that people are trying to make this about race. And, you know, frankly, that is a big tragedy, because there's a bigger story to be had here about, like, once again, the failures of law enforcement in various major cities. And as someone that, you know, has frequented Seattle, Portland, and major cities within the Pacific Northwest, law enforcement just simply has failed on multiple accounts in providing adequate public safety. And people in the citizenry, frankly, just don't feel like, you know, they are being sufficiently protected. And so this is why I titled the stream as it is, that being, are we so totally cooked, quote, because it really does feel that way. And with all the things going on, especially pertaining to this case, but also with the assassination attempt that also happened with the CEO of United Healthcare, which I unfortunately don't have the luxury of having extra time to talk about. But regardless, you are seeing these people you're seeing the citizenry now forcing them, feeling like as though they have to take a more vigilante approach to these pressing issues. And as far as the assassin is concerned, and that's what he was an assassin, I don't necessarily think he was posing being a vigilante. But I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the tweets specifically following after the event from very big accounts are now going out and encouraging other people to kill the CEO of other insurance agencies. For instance, I'm not going to pull up the tweet now because I was talking about Daniel Penny right now, but I couldn't help but go on to this next topic. But you have seen leftists encourage people to kill the CEO of, I believe it was the Regents Blue Shield, I think it was, or Regents Health Insurance Company. At any rate, it was some major health insurance company, and they were telling, there was leftist accounts telling their followers to also take advantage of the situation and to ensure justice if they, you know, they're not outwardly asking for basically domestic terrorism. They're not asking for it, but I need to find that tweet. I need to illustrate my point better here. Hold on a second. I'm not going to be able to find it. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I saw major leftist accounts basically say, because the CEO of that insurance company saying that anesthesia can only now be covered to a certain duration of time for medical procedures. And so people aren't able to afford certain surgeries that are necessary because anesthesia will not be entirely covered, right? And I've been seeing people say, by the way, this is the CEO of the Regents health insurance company, right? Here she is. And people are absolutely, utterly, there have been very negative accounts concerning that, but also very positive accounts in support. And whether or not you want to say that's a good thing or a bad thing, what I'm trying to say is people on both sides of the political spectrum and of varying ideological beliefs are feeling like they have to take a vigilante approach because they are not being heard by their officials, their public officials, their political officials, their representatives, and also by those that have sworn to protect them in the public. And we are seeing multiple structures fail within the country, and that's why I think what the assassin did with the United Health CEO is almost in a weird way forwarding a new, I don't want to say era, but at least a new genre almost of political activism. And I know that sounds very dark, but that seems to be what's happening here, because with President Trump coming in now, with his administration, and he's basically throwing up wild picks for his administration, as we have come to find out, and for the cabinet positions, he's kind of like bringing to light the failures of bureaucracy, and almost, I don't want to say making a joke of it, because I actually don't mind a lot of his picks, but in a way he is kind of turning it on its head, right? You know, Matt Gaetz for AG, RFK, that one WWE lady whose name is escaping me right now, for Department of Education, and all the other picks. It's having people question not yeah, you could say the legitimacy of the previous administrations and also the current administration. But also, and I've heard people pose this, that it's in a way a humiliation ritual of exposing the levels of state bureaucracy for what they are. And so by these pics, he's making all the establishmentarian types and all the bureaucrats in their positions of power very uncomfortable. And so what we are seeing following this is that seeing the failures of bureaucracy of the past, and right now, presently, where you are on the political spectrum, maybe perhaps even seeing the failures of the upcoming bureaucracy, or lack thereof, people feel like, for the most part, the electorate feels like that they're not being adequately represented, and they weren't in the past. And so what you're seeing is that people are just going to have to take an active role in very varying situations, whether that's dangerous or whether or not they feel like they want to get retributive justice. Anyway, here's Daniel Penny's prosecutor, Daphne Yoran, and she's talking about how she reduced another person's felony murder to, I guess, manslaughter, says this tweet, because, quote, she felt sorry for them. Okay, so this is a woman that is prosecuting Daniel Penny and wants him to get those 15 years in prison. And this is what she has to say.
So I'm going to give you an example of something that I did with a recent case of mine. And this has never been done in my office. I had a murder case where the defendant did not intentionally kill the victim. He went into an ATM on the Upper West Side and tried to rob an individual. Unfortunately, it was an older individual. He was 86. And in the course of the robbery, he fell to the ground, and as a result, he died. This is, under the law, a felony murder, which is akin to intentional murder. However, when I first got the case, I learned, I took the time to learn about the defendant. And it was a strong case, so it wasn't about who done it. I knew immediately who did it. I could prove it. I could take it to trial that day and win it. But it wasn't about that. It was that the more I learned about the defendant and his life and the circumstances, the kinds of things that Jarrell was talking about, that one should take into account the trauma of that individual, I really felt incredibly sorry for him that he had gotten to that point in his life where he felt like there was no other choice but to commit this robbery.
Very interesting. Hold on. Yeah, there you go. So very interesting how Daniel Penny isn't getting that same treatment, especially consider, I think, that the greater possibility that his reasons for manslaughter is perhaps more justified than this individual's. And here's another interesting point. Daniel Penny put a homeless felon in a failed chokehold to stop him from attacking passengers. His bail, $200,000. Mohammed Ezzedine, 22, raped a woman at knife point after breaking into her home, was released without bail. And there you go. So there's a comparison between the two individuals. Also interesting how there's that, little corruption going on there. The jury, and this last tweet I'll read out loud. The jury acquitted O.J. Simpson of murder in 4 hours. The jury acquitted Kyle Rittenhouse after more than 4 days. Daniel Penny's jury is in the 3rd day of deliberations. Quite the justice system we've got here. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm reaching to the end of my stream, so I could just go on and on, but I can't do that today. It's a Thursday, and on Thursdays it's a Liberty Tonight Thursday. So what that means is, you guys, that I'm going to be encouraging you to go to the Liberty Tonight stream, and I want to see if I can actually do a raid this time. So give me a second. I'm going to pull up the link here and hopefully raid that. But yeah, what do you guys think about that? A lot of stories today. Some darker than others. I really liked that interview I had with Monsieur Z, though, and the question of Americanism and American identity. I really enjoyed that. And yeah, it's been a kind of a heavier stream, actually, now that I think about it. We talked about transgenderism as well, and like detransition. Okay. Let me get the link up here. There we go. Okay. Link is secured, everybody. Okay. I want to thank everyone for coming onto this stream. Thank you for sticking it with me, and I want to once again thank Monsieur Z for making it on stream as well. That was a very enlightening interview, and thank you for all the people that have donated the Rumble Rants. It's very much appreciated. I will see you next week on Tuesday, and I have many more interesting interviews, and of course, I'm sure potentially even more interesting stories to talk about. And the importance of having these stories is that hopefully by talking about them and having open dialogue, and having new ideas even come forth of this, because it's all part of the dialectic, right? But through that, we can hopefully reclaim the zeitgeist in the United States back to the traditional spirit of Americana that I so often talk about on this show. And I hope that you guys can at least take whatever we mentioned here on stream and take it forth in the rest of your evening or in the other aspects of your lives. So I want to thank you, everyone. And I'm going to send the link here for you to raid the Liberty Tonight stream. So thank you so much. Let me place that link right there. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone, and have a